Okay, this is the second video in part one, and I want to talk a little bit more about units. The way that numbers are used in AutoCAD, first of all, numbers are assumed to be positive unless you're told they're negative. If whole numbers and fractions are used, you need to separate them somehow. And so far we've only been talking about decimal units. I did touch on how to change them. But first I'm going to show how you can use fractions even if you're using the decimal format. I'm going to use the line command. Left click to start a location after I use the command, and I typed L and hit enter. And I'm going to make this line 2. Now I don't have to enter the inch marks. In fact, in decimal, AutoCAD doesn't care if that's 2 inches or 2 feet or 2 miles. But normally that would be assumed to be inches, at least when you get ready to dimension it. So I'm going to use the line command again, another start place. Now suppose I want that to be 2 3/16. Well, I don't have to get out a calculator and see what 3/16 will be. I can use 2, and I need to put something between the 2 and the 1 of, did I say 1/6? Well, anyway, 2 1/16, 3/16, whatever I said, just some sort of fraction. So I need to put something between the 2 and the beginning of the fraction. So I'll put a dash, and I'm going to put in 1/16. Draw one that's 2 1/16 inches long. I don't have to enter the inch mark. Hit enter to accept that. And maybe I can barely tell a difference between those two lines, but I'm going to do dimension linear, which is a command we haven't talked about yet. You see I got 2.0625. Get rid of that. Let's say that I want to draw something that's in feet and inches. So I need to change my format, units, to architectural. When it's in architectural, then I can use feet if I want to, but I don't have to. If I don't put in a foot mark, it'll assume inches. So I'm going to click OK and do L, and I'm going to use 1 here. So that's 1 inch. I brought up the line command again. Click here, 1, and the foot mark. Now that's off the screen, so I'm going to do View, Zoom, Extents. Zoom my screen out. And just to check, I'm going to do Dimension, Linear. And I can see that that's 12 inches. This format of my dimension is a totally separate command from formatting my units. You can draw in one unit, you can dimension in another. We'll get rid of that. Do line again. Starting point. This time I'm going to do 1 foot, 2. I don't need a dash between the 1 and the 2 as long as I have that foot mark. Then I'm going to use a dash between the 2 and the fraction because I have to have some sort of divider. I'll do 3/8. And then I'm going to do dimension, linear. Now I'm snapping to the end of the line because my object snap is on. And that's 14.375 to 375 being the 3/8. So those are some ways, different ways to draw. If I change my format back, format, units, change it back to decimal, and click OK, and I try to draw a line that is 1 foot long, 1 foot, then CAD doesn't know what to do with that information. It doesn't understand the foot mark when it's in decimal units. So that's one way for you to tell that if you're trying to draw in feet and inches. it doesn't work, then you were probably in the wrong format. The last time I talked about the Cartesian coordinate system, the first two drawings are going to be drawn using coordinates, but after that we won't be drawn exactly that same way. But it is a good exercise to learn the difference between absolute and relative. If you look on page 81, they'll show you a little bit about locating points using the grid system and Cartesian coordinates. There's three different ways to use your coordinates. One is absolute, one is relative, and one is polar. Absolute, everything is related back to the origin, which is 0, 0. Relative, you use an @ symbol before you type the coordinates, and everything is related to each other, not to the origin. Polar just means you're drawing an angle, and you use the less than symbol. So I'm going to get rid of this, and then I'm going to draw, first I'm going to draw the box on page 87, then I'm going to draw the one on page 88. So I got my line command, and my starting point is going to be 4, 2. I would take your time when you're doing this. Look at the dimension that you entered to be sure you entered it correctly. That's my starting point. Zoom out a little bit on my screen so I can see it. And then I'm going to enter 7, 2. I'll look at it to be sure I didn't type in a decimal instead. 7, 6. 4, 6. I paused it, so I've got to pick up my line command again. Oh, there it is. And then I've got 4, 2, and hit enter. And then if I want to get out of the command, I hit enter again to close it. Just going to zoom up on this and see that each of those lines meet. So what I've done is I've drawn something using the absolute coordinate. Excuse me. I'm going to show you how to get information about an entity. The easiest way to me is to type LI for list and hit enter, select an object, hit enter again, and it brings up information about that, and it gives you the length, and it gives you the coordinates. One of them was 4, 2, and one of them was 7, 2. So if you have a question about what you've drawn, because there's an example of what lab 1 and 2 should look like, they should look just alike, just drawn using a different method, then you can use LI for list, and you can select an entity, and then this little text window will give you the information, and you can tell whether or not you used the correct X and Y. On the next side of that, I'm going to erase that, and then I'm going to start on the other one on page 88 using absolute coordinates. Use my line command. My first point is 2, 2. Enter. My next one is, instead of putting 6, 0, I'm going to use the @ symbol, 6, 0. That's going to add the 6, 0 plus the 2, 2. And then I've got at 2, 2. It gave me an angled line at 0, 3. At -2, 2. I hit 2 buttons at one time. -2, 2. Hit enter. Let me view, zoom, extents so I can see my drawing better. let's see, the last thing I entered was, I can't see it, so I'm going to press F2. And that shows me the last one I entered was a -2, comma 2. I'm going to X out of that. And then I'm going to enter @ symbol, -6, comma 0. Then the next one is going to be the @ symbol, 0, comma, -7. And then I hit enter to get out of the line command. Now going back to that using F2 like we did a while ago, if my drawing comes out incorrect, I can press F2 and then I can look at the data that I entered and see if I have anything that I entered incorrectly. F2 just gives you a few more lines of the command line for you to look at. We'll X out of that. That was the 2 different methods. I think I'll go ahead and erase that one and talk about the polar coordinate system. The less than symbol is used to represent an angle. If you use the @ symbol in front of it, then it combines relative and at an angle. If you don't use that @ symbol, then it takes it from the origin. So let's do our line command, and I'm going to start it somewhere, and regardless of whether my ortho is on or not, I'm going to put the @ symbol, and I'm going to put in 4, comma 2, give an angle of 45. Okay, let's use the line command again. At a distance, at 4, less than 45. Okay, I had one too many coordinate in there. I didn't understand what I wanted it to do. What I wanted to do was draw a line at 4 units and at an angle of 45 degrees. AutoCAD references 0 starting at a horizontal line drawn here, saying this is the beginning point or the center of a circle, if you want to think about, and then this is 45, and if we wanted 45 on that side, we'd have to use 100 and we'd have to use well, if we wanted 90 degrees, we'd use 90. If we wanted 45 over here, which was 3 45s away, then we would have to use 135. If we wanted a 45 over here, then we would have to use whatever 45 is added to 180 to locate it in this quadrant 3. Dynamic input is discussed on page 85. I don't like it because it makes the screen kind of busy, but there's a button, and if you've got your tooltips on, so if you get close to this button, it looks like a crosshair with a little box beside of it. So if you want to try, you can turn that on. And now I'm going to do the line command. And you can see I get suggestions. Turn off my ortho. Get all kinds of suggestions on the screen, and it also brings up the command line and puts it right there for me. So if you like it, fine, you can use it. I personally, I don't like to use it, so I'll leave it cut off. I want to talk about erase, and I can see I don't have that option on the toolbar for erase, but I'm going to use modify, erase, choose an object, I'm sorry, they changed something about the erase command since the last time I used it. So there's another way that you can choose items to erase them. You can choose erase, and this is called the fencing option. I type F immediately after I hit erase, and now I can draw a fence without having to draw the box, and everything I touch after I hit enter is erased. Undo again. You can also draw some other entities around. Like I said, if we don't want to go to the trouble of drawing a box, or maybe there's just particular individual pieces that we want to erase, use the erase button, type F immediately, and then just touch on the items. And then it only erases those that we drew the fence around. Occasionally, you might need to clean your screen up. Occasionally, you need to regenerate your computer screen if you do a lot of zooming in and out. My AutoCAD seems to be trying to ignore me. Some will zoom in and out a little bit, and I probably can't make this happen. But there's a lot of zooming in and out, and all of your coordinates are not recalculated every single second of the move. So sometimes if things don't look quite like they're supposed to look, you can do View, Regen, and depending on how much you moved around, your computer might flash a little bit, but that regenerates and recalculates all of your coordinates. So I haven't been doing a lot of zooming around, but occasionally you'll run into a spot that maybe you're trying to draw a line at an intersection, and the intersection that it's picking doesn't exactly look like the intersection. So you can do View, Regen, and all of a sudden your lines straighten out a little bit more. Now when you use your line command and it picks up the intersection, you can see that it's the intersection. I'm going to go back to View, Zoom, and Extents to the extents of my drawing. There's only one other thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about the grid, and I want to talk about the snap that's right beside the grid, because here's the grid, then the snap is right beside of it. This snap has nothing to do with object snap. It's whether or not you want it to snap to a grid. Usually the only thing I want to know about snap is how to turn it off, because if I've got my grid on and if I've got my snap on, when I try to do the line command, then it acts jerky to me. See, it's trying to snap to a grid location. So I'm going to turn that off. If you like to use the grid, I'm going to right click, Settings. This is where you would change the way it's set up. So right now we've got the snap is off. Here's another place that you can turn the snap on or off. And the spacing is 0.5 unit. If 1 unit is an inch, then you've got spacing, every 0.5 inch. That's your snap. And your grid is set for 1/2 inch also. So your snap setting can be different than your grid spacing if you want to. And then you have major lines every 5. But I'm going to just click OK. Just want to show you where that was if you like to use it. And then I'm going to left click to turn it off. And that's all. So you got lab 1 and 2 that are due for this section.